Perfect. All right, then I would say let's start. I see that some of you are already there. Hopefully someone else is going to join in the future minutes, I mean. So yeah, again, please ask your questions by the end of the webinar. I'm now going to start with the topic of today. The topic of today is, is diversity and inclusion, what you should expect as a candidate, as a job seeker that is now approaching, of course, the Dutch market. So first, I want to start with a bit of an agenda of what we are going to discuss today. It does seem long, I know, but don't get scared. We're going to go through it together. And again, we're going to answer your questions if you have any. So I'm going to start by introducing a bit Untouchables to you, because we think that that's also an important topic for you to keep in mind. Then we are going to go right through the heart of our webinar. So what is diversity and inclusion? What is diversity and what is inclusion? And what's the difference between them? Then we're going to talk about recruitment. And what is inclusive recruitment? How is inclusion connected to recruitment itself? There's also an exception, and it's called positive discrimination. We're going to talk about that. And also about how we, Untouchables, make sure that you're not discriminated, and how you can, in a way, avoid discrimination and place yourself even in a stronger way compared to other candidates. We are then also going to give you just some tips of things that you can, if you want, avoid to put on your resume, if you just want to be more sure that you're not going to be discriminated. Although, of course, we want to emphasize that the person that is going to read your resume should and normally is aware of what is discrimination and what is not. As I said multiple times already, then we're going to have a Q&A session where we can discuss, of course, all your questions and answers and talk about it together. First, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Giordano. I am one of the recruitment consultants, and I am originally from Italy, but I live in the Netherlands and I work at the Utrecht office. I work at Untouchables Recruitment Agency, as I said, and as you know, which is an agency that specializes on finding multilingual talents in the Netherlands for companies that are looking for these talents. So what you can expect from us is that we are going to support you on your job search here in the Netherlands from 5 different offices. We have office in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague, and Eindhoven, and Utrecht in the Netherlands. And we also have one in Stockholm, actually. So if you're also looking for a job there, you can find us. We, as I said, work with internationals, or in general, multilingual talents, people that speak more languages rather than only Dutch and English. And we focus on office-based positions or commercial roles. So with us, you can find a job in sales, marketing, finance, HR, customer service, this kind of positions, let's say, but you name them. We, of course, have more. Our recruitment process is quite standard when it comes to agencies in the Netherlands, at least. So if you're not yet registered on our database, please, on our website, please do so, because your CV is going to enter our unified database that we, recruiters, use for our searches. So you're not only going to be able to apply yourself actively to positions, but we're also going to be able to reach out to you if we come across your resume during one of our searches. Then you're going to have an in-depth interview with us if you match the requirement of the vacancy. And then we're going to introduce you to a company and support you throughout the whole recruitment process. Of course, then this recruitment process will then be done by the company itself, but we're still going to be there. We are going to support you. We're going to help you preparing the interview, and we're going to negotiate your contract and salary for you if that's needed. Of course, all your information is always going to be treated confidentially, and it will not be seen by a company if you do not give us our permission. So your permission. So don't worry. If you're planning on registering on our database, we are always able to come across your resume, but we are never going to send it to a company if you haven't given us your go. But now let's start. Let's start, as I said, with the heart of our webinar, that is diversity and inclusion in inclusive recruitment and what you can expect from it. So what is diversity? Diversity is a representation of society. But what do we mean by that? Society is not made only of one characteristics. Luckily, it's made of many different characteristics. Companies nowadays should and are wanting to, to have the society represented on their work floor as well. But there are different types of diversities. Mainly, we can summarize it into, we have different personal characteristics, and that's diversities, and they are, for example, your heritage, or or what your religion is, what you believe in, and we are going to discuss this further later on. Another one that is also equally important is different backgrounds. So what brings you there? What makes you you? So it's what you've studied, what your knowledge is, what your work experiences are, what you have done in life that makes you a diverse candidate compared to other persons that work together with you. Again, embrace this, of course, because it's something that makes you you and that makes you special. And then there's another concept. This concept is the concept of inclusion. And it actually, it's often used as a synonym, but it's actually not. What I would like to say and to point out is that diversity and inclusion go hand in hand, but they are two different concepts, and rather they are connected by a cause and effect relationship, sort of. This is because inclusion refers to the work environment. So if there are diverse job and diverse employees in a company, then there has to be inclusion. So we can say that inclusion is a consequence of diversity. So this means that if there's a personal characteristic or a background characteristic that is different from the one of the others, then you should always be treated in a fair and respectful way. And this is also really important to mention. You should always have the same opportunities. So to give an example, just by using actually a majority that is unfortunately oftentimes treated as a minority, so the one of the female gender, female employees should have the same opportunities of male employees. This means that the company is acting in an inclusive way, and they have an inclusion policy that they're putting into practice. Again, this is something really important for you as a candidate, as a job seeker, and it doesn't matter where you are or what that characteristic is. The company should take that into account. So it's oftentimes you can always ask for the diversity and inclusion policies that a company has during a recruitment process, if that's something that concerns you or something that you're just curious about. If a company, sometimes, bigger companies have a diversity and inclusion department, but it's not always the case. But a lot of companies have at least inclusion clauses in the contracts or inclusion policies. So it's, of course, your right as a job seeker to ask more information about that. So just to wrap it up, between the difference between diversity and inclusion, diversity focuses on the individual. So what is diverse in an individual compared to other individuals? And of course, companies want to aim at diversity because they want to make it representative of the society they're operating in. So as we said, society is not made only of one characteristics, and companies are more and more aiming at also having that represented on their work floor. So if you feel like diversity could actually be used in your favor, use it, because companies are really looking for that. And then we also have inclusion, as we said, and the focus here is on the environment. So it's a consequence of diversity and a consequence of what companies are putting into practice to ensure that the diversity of their employees is preserved and that their employees are treated all in the same way, despite their diversities. But Inclusion is not only something that concerns the employees that are already working as a companies, but as I said, it's really important also for you to know as a job seeker. So someone that is applying for a position at a certain company or through a certain agency. So you cannot be discriminated on the grounds of religion, beliefs, political opinions, age, race, gender, or disabilities, also during the recruitment process. So the recruitment is never going to be based on the characteristics that I have just listed. So this also means, and again, the recruiter or the person that is conducting the interview knows that, but for you to know, you are not going to be asked questions about the matters that you can see now on the slides. This means that if you are afraid that you could be discriminated for your political opinions, for example, you can be sure that the person is not going to ask if he or she is using an inclusive type of recruitment. So that is, of course, the inclusion that is allowed to do in the Netherlands. So if you feel that you are hesitant about something, do not be scared, because there's not going to be a point in the recruitment process where you're going to be addressed that, or that you're going to have to defend yourself for one of these characteristics. So also health questions are not going to be asked, unless of course you're going to bring up something that's your decision, but the recruiter is not going to initiate a conversation on these topics. There are some exceptions that we can discuss, and these exceptions fall within the umbrella term of positive discrimination. So positive discrimination is a kind of discrimination, but it's a positive one. It's allowed. This means that actually plays in favor of those categories that are normally discriminated. And that's why it's positive discrimination. So it's something that is good for you. Don't get scared when you see positive discrimination policies named on some vacancies, because that's actually something that is good for you most of the times. Or if it's not good for you, it's good for someone that normally has more difficulties than you finding a job. So these exceptions that you see listed here are just the major examples. The first one is if a group is not represented or is not big enough. We're going to bring some details and some more examples on this, but again, we can use the example of gender. So if in a company or an institution, the management sees that the female group is not represented enough, and despite being a majority in terms of word population, is actually a minority in their company, they can put into practice positive discrimination in order to attract only or mostly female applicants for the job. This is not always easy, and we're going to see that a bit more in details later on. There are requirements, and this is very important for you to keep in mind. So you must meet certain requirements in order to be accepted for a job. So this means that if we or a company is looking for someone that speaks German, for example, in an excellent way, and we are not going to proceed with you because your German is for now only on an intermediate level, this is not discrimination. This is a requirement that is needed for you to be good at your job, to provide the service that is asked for you to be done by the company. So this is a requirement, and it's very different from discrimination. So companies cannot look for German employees in terms of nationalities, but they can look for someone that speaks excellent German. Same goes, of course, for Dutch, because I'm sure that as job seekers who come from different countries and who are looking for a job in the Netherlands, you are now understandably encountering a lot of vacancies for which speaking Dutch is necessary. This is necessary for some companies, for a lot of them in the Netherlands, of course, being Dutch the first language, but it's not a matter of discrimination. It's just a matter of the market they operate in, or the corporate language. Another example that I want to bring is the one of junior and senior positions. So it's true that you cannot be discriminated on the grounds of your age. We've said that before. But there's a difference between age and level of seniority in terms of your professional life. So this means that you can be a junior candidate, you can be in a, let's just pick an example. You can be in a range between 25 and 30 years old, but you can in a way be more senior than in a certain role than someone who is older in terms of age than you, but has worked for less time in that position. So that's why actually using junior and senior is important. It's important for companies because there are different ways of working in a certain role. And companies often want to shape the way a candidate approaches his or her role. And this can most of the times only be done if it's a junior, for example, or the other way around. They're looking for someone with experience. So I just wanted to clear this up for you that if a company is looking for someone with years of experience, it's not discrimination. It's just a preference based on their needs, wishes, and expectations in that specific moment. There's a third one that we want to discuss with you. I do want to point out that this last part is actually not applicable for the jobs that we have at Untouchables because we offer office-based positions. But I do want to point it out for you because I think it's important to know is that if the work is dangerous or heavy, then, for example, you are going to be in a way discriminated on the base of your age, on the ground of your age. And that's because normally for this kind of positions, you cannot be hired if you are less than 18 years old. So if you are underage, at least based on the underage age in the Netherlands. And same goes for disabilities. Of course, if you have a disability that would impede you from doing a heavy or dangerous job, it might be the case that the company in question would then not be able to proceed with your application. I mentioned before that I wanted to just give you a couple of examples of positive discrimination. And I have here two examples that are actually based on universities in the Netherlands. So here you see two different headers. One is for the Eindhoven universities. What they did here, they tried to put into practice the positive discrimination policies that are allowed in the Netherlands. That's because they noticed that the women group, as I said before, was underrepresented among the researchers. So the most of the researchers were actually male and not females, and they wanted to change that. They wanted at least to have more of a balance, let's say. They have then posted these vacancies online as a call-in for female researchers. But as you see here on the header, eventually in July last year, they were denied the permission to do that. So this is because I wanted to just point out and make it clear that it is hard for companies to obtain permission from the government or from the authorities to actually positive discriminate during the recruitment. So it's not often that you're going to see a call-in for example, only females or only candidates in a certain age range. It really doesn't happen often, but it does happen. So if you do come across something that mentions, for example, the gender, and it might be that that company has actually received permission to do so. And on the other hand, you also see the TU Delft, so the university in Delft, that in July 2019 was also actively looking for female academic talent in the science and technology sector. So this is also an example of positive discrimination. And I just wanted to pinpoint this one out for you so that you can actually read what you could expect from a vacancy that actually is positive discriminating a group. So here you can read, are you this outstanding female scientist who will contribute to TU Delft, finding innovative solutions to the challenge of today's society? So as you can see, it's not only mentioned in the title, but it's also mentioned in the job description that they were actually looking for a female researcher or more female researchers. Again, this doesn't happen often, but it is allowed. So do your research in case if you're wondering, and you can always ask for an opinion to the authorities that are in charge of this. So it's the Department of Human Rights of the Dutch government. You can ask for an opinion if you feel like you have been discriminated. But how do we make sure that you're not discriminated? And what is it that you can also do yourself? If you are feeling like there's something that makes you you that could lead to discrimination, I want to emphasize this one more time because it's really important for you to hear where we stand, is that we know that we are not going to discriminate you on this. So there's no need to do that you avoid these characteristics. So I was talking on behalf of Untouchables, but I'm also talking on behalf of companies in general in a way, meaning that in theory, if the recruiter or the person in charge, the talent acquisition specialist, or just the person that is in charge of recruitment in that moment, knows that he or she cannot discriminate you on the ground of this. So this is just an extra action that you can do if you feel like you want to be sure that this is not going to happen. But again, it shouldn't be the case anyway. You shouldn't be the one that is taking action for that to avoid, but you can be if you want to. So what we do is that we do not change the layout of your resume. So we know that you put a lot of effort into your resume, and we are going to be really careful in trying to keep it the way you wanted it to look like. So, but we do delete information from your resume. You can see a brief, a small picture here, a small segment, but we are going to go in depth later about that too. And we delete your picture, your age, your nationality, your marital status if you have included it, your family structure if you have included it, and we use neutral language. So in some countries, there are information that has to be included in the CV. So for example, I know that in some countries, candidates are required to put in their marital status or their family structure. Or in some other countries, like for example in China, I know from job seekers that sometimes you are even required to put in your height and your weight. These characteristics do not have to be included in your resume in the Netherlands. Again, you're allowed to do so. It's not like they're not going to look at your resume if you do include that, but it's not mandatory. You don't have to. So since we know that you might be discriminated even unconsciously on the grounds of these characteristics, we are going to delete them from your resume. And this means that you can also do the same. When you're applying for a job, you do not have to include this information. Here, we wanted to just bring you a quick example of what a resume can look like on the left side, but doesn't have to look like. So, and on the right, you can see what we do with a resume that looks like this when we decide to introduce you to one of our clients, so to one of the companies we work with. Here on the left, you can see the resume from this lady, Anya Scheffer, and she is living in Amsterdam. She has included a telephone number, her email address, her nationality. She comes from Germany, sorry. Her age, 45 years old. Her religion, Catholic. Then you can see that she has used layouts that she has found online, probably, or she has created it herself, of course. She has included her summary, her personal skills, her experiences, work experiences, of course. So you can see here that this is actually a good looking resume. It has everything that it needs to have, but it also has some information that doesn't have to have, if I'm making sense. So the one on the right is the one that we work on as recruitment consultants when we decide to introduce Anya for, let's say, her next sales position, since she works as a sales assistant. So she now wants to have a sales job. She applies to Untouchables. We receive the resume that is on the left. We have our first interview with her. And then we are going to decide, we have decided that, yeah, She's the match. We are going to introduce Anya to our client, to the company we collaborate with. So we work on Anya's resume, being very careful that we are not going to change anything on her layout, because we know that Anya's worked hard on it, but we want to be sure that she's not going to be discriminated. So you can see that we keep the address. And just one thing that I wanted to add, it's not necessary that you put in your full address. Each city should be fine enough, but you can of course include your own address. And then we are also going to delete the age and the religion. So oh yeah, of course I'm mentioning that this is a fake resume. Anya Sheffer doesn't exist, but it's good to know. It's good for me to mention that. And yeah, so we delete the telephone number. It's actually there. We delete her age, her nationality, and her religion. Because as we've seen before, we cannot discriminate on the ground of many characteristics, among which age, religion, and nationality. So if our client was looking for someone that speaks excellent German, that's great. We have found her. It doesn't matter where she comes from, because we are recruiting on the base of her language skills and not on the base of her country of origin, let's say. So I hope that this is clear. I hope it's clear that you can already forward to us if you want a resume that looks like the one on the right. And you can also do the same with companies that you apply for, not through Untouchables, but you apply for directly. So if you're sending your application and you feel like, hey, I remember that Giordano from Untouchables told me that actually it's not necessary that I put in my age if I feel conscious about it for some reason, then just don't do that. You're allowed to do so. And now it's time for you to come in action, because we're going to test your knowledge. So this is going to be through the poll tool that we have here on Zoom. So you're just going to have to click. There's no need for you to talk. Don't worry. So I'm now going to start a poll with some questions, and you're then going to be able to answer, of course. And I am going to share the answers with you guys. The answers are, of course, anonymous. So I am not going to see who has voted for what. And when I'm going to share the answers on the screen, participants are also not going to be able to see who voted for what, let's say. So I hope you're all ready and you are here to start. So here it is. So here's the first one. This is a sentence that you could read on a job description, and it's, we are looking for a talented young candidate. You are between 25 and 30 years of age. So is this allowed or not? So if you think that this is not allowed, that companies cannot do this, then you have to click on no. No, it's not allowed. Okay, I see here that the numbers are still changing. So let's see. We now have 9 plus 5. Yeah, good. All right, so we are looking for a talented young candidate. You are between 25 and 30 years old. Is this allowed or not? So I'm now sharing the results with you. 64% of you have mentioned that this is not allowed. We are looking for a talented young candidate, and mentioning the age is not allowed. This is a form of discrimination on the grounds of age, and we have seen that this is not possible to do by a company. So you shouldn't, and you're probably not going to read a job description like this. Okay. I am going to now continue with the second one. Oh, I think you have received again the first one, sorry. Yes, here it is. Now you're seeing which one of the following information can you avoid on your resume. You can avoid putting your last name, you can avoid putting your nationality, you can avoid putting your telephone number, and you can avoid putting your educational level. Okay, I already see here a nice trend of who is voting for what. Well, let's say that not who is voting for what, as I said, but who that you guys are all voting for the good one. I'm going to wait a couple of seconds more because I see that we have 11 answers for now, but they're now going up. Okay. Okay, I'm going to close it in 10 seconds. So if you haven't voted yet, you can vote now, and then I'm going to share the answers with you. So which one of the following information can you avoid on your resume? Let's see. That's correct. 93% of you has answered nationality, and that's correct. You can avoid mentioning your nationality. So if you're from Italy, like myself, you don't have to put that you're Italian. And I see that one of you has mentioned last name, so I just wanted also to address that. It's actually important for us that you mention your last name because you are, of course, a person with a first name and a last name. And your last name doesn't say anything about where you come from, because you could have a French last name and actually be from Norway, let's say. So that really doesn't matter, but you have to mention that. Okay. I'm now going to proceed with the third one. Okay. You're going to read this. Is this discrimination or not? Our company is recruiting for a new employee who speaks excellent German. Is this discrimination? Then click yes. Is this discrimination? Then click no. I see answers coming in. So if you think that looking for someone who speaks excellent German is discrimination, click yes. If you think that recruiting for someone that speaks excellent German is not discrimination, then click no. I see that answers are still coming in. Perfect. Let's see what you guys have answered. Correct. 93% of you have answered no. This is not discrimination. Our company is recruiting for a new employee who speaks excellent German, or our company is recruiting for someone that speaks excellent Dutch or Dutch on a C2 level, let's say, is not discrimination. So you're not only, of course, going to read the adjective excellent, it could also be mentioning levels that are the official levels that are used in Europe for languages. Then if they're looking for someone that speaks that language, it's not discriminatory. It would have been if it was our company is recruiting for a new employee who comes from Germany. Okay. Yes. Now, 1 second. We're now going to the 4th one. Is this discrimination or not? We would like to welcome another salesman in our team. If you think it's discrimination, then click yes. If you think it's not discrimination, then click no. Okay. So you have, of course, to picture yourself. You're on Indeed, you're scrolling through vacancies, you find something really interesting, you read the vacancy description as it said, and it says, we would like to welcome another salesman in our team to join the rest of our employees. If you think that this is discrimination, click yes. If you think it's not, then click no. I do still see that the numbers are slightly changing, so it means that people are still answering. I'm going to give you guys 10 more seconds, let's say, just so that you can make up your mind and pick one. We're almost at the end of our survey. Okay, let's see what you guys have voted. Oh, wait a second, sorry. I was clicking on the wrong one. Here it is. So here, this is a very interesting one because This is discrimination. So the majority of you have voted correctly, 60%. But I do see that 40% of you have actually voted no. This is not discrimination. So I think it's important to address why. We would like to welcome another salesman in our team. This implies that they're looking for someone whose gender is male, and this is not allowed. So it could be a salesman, it could be a saleswoman, or it could be everything in between. So there's no need to put salesman. It can be, we would like to welcome another sales representative in our team. That would be allowed. That's actually what they should do. But if someone is looking for specifically for a salesman, actually is not adhering to the agreements that it should have with in terms of non-discriminatory recruitment or inclusive recruitment. So yes, it would be discrimination. Yes. And now we go with the last one. And the last one is, which one of the following statements is correct? Job seekers in the Netherlands must include a picture in their resume. Including a photo in your resume is accepted, but it's not mandatory in the Netherlands. Okay, let's see votes coming in. Okay, good. So this, of course, as you see, it's more of a true or false. So if you think which one of the two you think is the right one, there are two that you can choose for. Okay, I see that we have received all the votes. So let's see. Correct. All of you have responded correctly, and that it's not mandatory that you put a picture on your resume. You can do that. It's because I know that in some countries it's actually not allowed to do that. That's not the case for the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, you are allowed to put a picture if you feel like you want to give a personal touch to your resume. But I wanted to ask you this question because I've mentioned that we are going to delete that. That's Untouchable's decision to do that, or that's something that we do. But if you are going to apply for a role that you found on Indeed at another company and you want to include your picture, do that. In the same way, if you want to apply for a job that you found on a job board and you feel like your picture could somehow trigger discrimination for whatever reason, then don't feel like you're forced to do that at all. You don't have to. Okay. Now I have here completed our survey. Good job. I hope that you guys could learn something, of course, about discriminatory recruitment, about discrimination and inclusion in general, or diversity and inclusion in general, sorry. And that you could also get some tools. Maybe you can make some changes in your resume if you want to. Or you also have now more tool in case you face some discrimination in your job search. Untouchables, of course, wants to be your partner in this. So we hope that we have given you a good overview. But if you have questions regarding that, questions regarding vacancies that you read, you can always reach out to us. But again, if you do feel like you have been really discriminated, there are, of course, authorities that can take care of this. So now it's time again to give you the floor in a way, because it's time for our Q&A session, let's say, or Q&A time. So I do see here on the questions and answers that we have a question. So let's see. It's from one of you, of course, and the question is it important to be living in the Netherlands when applying for a job? So that's a good question, because it's, again, not mandatory, and it really depends. So it is easier if you apply for a job when you already live in the Netherlands, because the Netherlands is already a very multi-international country. So there are a lot of talents already living in the Netherlands. And companies tend to prefer candidates who already live here because they are familiar with the country. They have already a house, because the housing market in the Netherlands is really tough. So it is important in a way, but it can happen that you find a job when you still don't live here, especially now that of course working from home is allowed. So companies are also open to online onboarding, so starting of new employees. So maybe it can be that some companies you apply for are actually open for you to start from your home country and then move to the Netherlands at a later stage. But you can always check that with your hopefully future employer. And normally in untouchables vacancies, you can read at the end in the job requirements section if it is allowed to do so, to apply when you don't live in the Netherlands. I see there's another question here. So I also wanted to get you guys to use the questions and answers tab or section on your Zoom so that I can receive them here. The second question is, how should I introduce myself in an interview? I am assuming that you are saying, wait a second. Yeah, I am assuming that you are saying that you would like, how you would like to maybe present yourself in a way, in terms of, I don't know, like first impression, I guess. If not, please let me know. But you have, of course, to consider that where you're going to have your interview. Is it online? Is it face-to-face? Right now, you cannot shake anyone's head, but a big smile is, of course, appreciated. And in the Netherlands, the culture is normally quite informal. So you don't need to introduce yourself as Mr. Tuvo, in my case, but you would have to introduce yourself as Giordano. And of course, a big smile and a professional look is what is important on a first interview as well. But you can just introduce yourself with your first name most of the times. But if you feel like the company culture, after having done your research online, is actually more formal, then you can also introduce yourself by your last name. But nobody is gonna get offended, let's say, if you introduce yourself with your first name. Okay. Let me see. I do see here still that the question that if it is important to be living in the Netherlands when applying for a job. I have answered this question already. Okay, I see now that it has been moved. Let me see. Yeah, do you guys have any other questions regarding working in the Netherlands? Of course, diversity and inclusions or discrimination in recruitment, but also just about working in the Netherlands, how to best find a job in the Netherlands, just some tips or something. I would be happy to answer to you. Let me see here. I see a question, which bank is looking for employees? So I'm not sure if I understand your question, but we have different branches at Untouchables. I work at the one in Utrecht, where we also have one in Eindhoven, one in The Hague, and one in Amsterdam. And all of us are currently looking for new employees on behalf of our clients. So the fact that we have branches in that specific city doesn't mean that we only work for that city, because we actually cover the whole country. So, for example, the Utrecht branch also takes care of the eastern part of the Netherlands together with the Eindhoven one, and we also take care of the northern part of the Netherlands. So if you're looking for a job anywhere in the Netherlands, do reach out to us, and the person, the Untouchables employee you're going to talk to is going to be able to refer you to the correct branch. I see another question here. Nice, keep them coming. Is Dutch important to know, or does English suffice most of the times? So we are Untouchables, so the name kind of gives it away. We are specialized on helping those candidates that do not speak Dutch yet or do not speak Dutch. So speaking Dutch is important in a way for a lot of Dutch companies. That's understandable. Of course, as we said, Dutch is first language of this country, but it's not always mandatory. So the Netherlands is quite of an international hub for companies. So there are companies for which it's actually enough or sufficient, as you said, that you speak only English or English and another language, even better. But so Dutch is important for you anyway to know, because if you're living in the Netherlands, of course, you're going to feel more integrated here. If you speak it, it is going to be a bit harder for you to find a job if you do not speak Dutch, but it's definitely not impossible. And that's why we're here. We're here to help those candidates that are finding a bit more struggling to finding a job for which speaking English or Dutch, sorry, is required. It's not required. I see another question here. What are my chances of getting employed if I'm not resident in the Netherlands? I have actually answered a similar question before. So your chances are lower, just simply put, that you're going to get employed if you're not living in the Netherlands already, but it's not impossible that that is going to happen. So you can find a job when you're not yet living in the Netherlands. It's harder, but now with online onboarding and online interviewing, things have become a little bit easier for those candidates that not yet live here. So it can happen, but do keep in mind that still, I would say the majority of the companies do prefer candidates or job seekers who already live here. Thanks for your question. I see another one. Would you suggest to travel to the Netherlands to look for a job rather? So if I would suggest to travel, I do think, I think you mean to just come to the Netherlands for a short time while looking for a job. Normally it could help because in a way you're going to be networking and getting to know you people and see what they are up to, what they're doing, expanding your network. But now, of course, we are in different times with the pandemic going on. So I wouldn't say that it's a lot, yeah, recommendable, let's say, to travel to the Netherlands for a short period of time to look for a job, because it's going to be harder anyway for you to network and meet people. So of course, keep in mind all the measurements have to be taken into account when traveling to a foreign country nowadays. Thank you. Okay, for now, I don't see any other questions, you guys. Oh no, never mind. Here's one. I see here. We are looking, oh yeah, here's a quotation of the question that I have asked you during our little quiz. And the question was, we are looking for a talented candidate. You are between 25 and 30 years old. This was considered discriminatory, but could it be that age group is underrepresented in the workforce and could therefore be considered positive discrimination? Good one. You were careful in listening to what I was saying, which is really nice. Thanks. And it's true. It could be positive discrimination, but again, it's oftentimes not allowed to positive discriminate. It's not something that always happens, or yeah, it's something that you could always address, of course. If you come across something like this, it's normally not allowed. If there has been a little chance that this company has managed to prove to the authorities in charge of understanding this, that this was positive discrimination, then they're going to be able to let you know, probably, or at least they're going to proceed with this kind of recruitment. But in general, companies are not allowed to do so. That's correct. Okay. Another one. Great. Let me see. Which industry is needing people? IT, communications, service? Thank you for your question, because I think that's really relevant for all of you that are looking for a job at the moment. So there are, of course, a lot of industries, or some industries that have suffered a bit more from the global pandemic we have been in since last year. And these industries are mainly, of course, events or hospitality. These kind of positions are, of course, a bit harder to find. So you've mentioned IT and communications, and these are actually industries that are still doing well, and they are still looking for talents because, of course, IT was already really important, was already taking over our way of communicating. And of course, with the global pandemic going on, this is actually even blooming a bit more, we can say. So if you have IT skills, or if you wish to grow into an IT position and gain skills, I would suggest that you do so. So if you're even looking for a job at the moment and you feel like you would like maybe in the future to continue in IT, but you don't have the necessary skills, maybe you can actually invest this time um, to train yourself. You can find free trainings on Google or on LinkedIn to get more experience with IT, because it's definitely an industry you could work in and that you could count on for now. Thank you for your question. Okay, let's see if you guys have any other questions. Of course, they can be on the webinar or what we've just discussed, but it can also be on, yeah, on whatever you need to know for jobs in the Netherlands. I'm gonna now open the chat. Because as I mentioned in the beginning, my colleague Queena, she's in the back office and she's now answering your questions. I'm happy to read your feedback, guys. I'm happy that I could be useful for you. Thank you for your time already. Let me see. Yeah, I see in the chat that Queena has answered the questions that needed to be answered. And of course, as she said, as I said at the beginning, this webinar is going to be on YouTube. So if you feel like you just want to brush up your memory of what we've said, or you want to just dive in a little more in depth about something we have touched on today, you can always go back on our channel. You can find us as Untouchables Recruitment Agency on YouTube, and you can find our webinar. You can also find other interesting webinars there. One that I specifically recommend for you guys is the CV workshop that my colleague Judith did some months ago. This is really useful because she has just touched on the details that you would need for creating an interesting and useful and resume that is in line with the Dutch market. So it's not only to create a resume, but a resume that is in line with the Netherlands. So if you're looking for a job here, I really highly recommend that you go and check out that webinar recording. Do you represent other recruitment agency? I see a question in our folder here, and the answer is no. I work at Untouchables, and at Untouchables we are a team of different recruitment consultants that solely work for Untouchables. I'm going to open the chat again. Yeah, thank you. I see someone that is living at the moment, so thank you for your time, guys. So I would say I will wait just one more minute if you guys have last minute questions, and then otherwise we will then wrap it up. So if you have a question, just shoot it now and I will be happy to answer. And in the meantime, I can already say that you should definitely look up our website, because we have vacancies open at the moment. We're going to be vacancies. We're going to be having vacancies being open in the future as well. So keep an eye out for that. And add me on LinkedIn. You can find me as Giordano Tuvo, and I will be happy to connect with you and even further discuss these topics with you if you feel like you have more questions. And we are on LinkedIn as Untouchables Recruitment Agency, on Instagram as well, on Facebook. So you can really find us everywhere, and you can find our vacancies everywhere. So if you feel like you just want to be really connected with us, make sure to follow us on all our channels. So I do not see any questions coming in. I'm gonna just quickly check the chat. Okay, perfect. Then thank you guys for your time. It's been really fun. I hope you also enjoyed it and you could learn something new about, different way to approach the Dutch market and different way to place yourself even before other candidates in the recruitment processes. Again, I'm looking forward to talking with you again if you have any questions, and I encourage you to keep an eye on our website. for new positions. So thank you for your time and have a nice day. Enjoy the weather and we'll see you soon.